Tonight, sounding the alarm. Critics point the finger at President Biden as thousands of migrants a week fan out across the country, some of whom carrying COVID.
They will defend the illegal immigrants against the right of Americans.
This as the Delta variant continues its deadly spread.
This surge is actually much bigger than anything that we have seen before.
Amid a debate over mask mandates and the COVID vaccine. And boycotting the Beijing Olympics.
I just can't imagine seeing the American flag flying there.
One group calling the Winter Games the genocide games over China's crimes against humanity. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The most migrants at the border in decades. Good evening and welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
I'm Jenna Bratter. Thank you for joining us. The numbers tell the story. Between June and July, a 13% increase in migrants. And since President Biden took office, illegal crossings are up.
And now critics are calling on the administration to act. CBN's Tara Mergener has tonight's top story.
In July alone, a record 210,000 migrants entered the U.S. along the border, often with the help of smugglers. Many of those putting their feet on American soil for the first time are said to be carrying COVID. Detention facilities out of space, agents overwhelmed, and border communities like McAllen, Texas, in a state of emergency.
It's an issue, and I keep on saying we shouldn't have to be dealing with it.
As thousands of migrants per week, unvaccinated, make their first pit stop here.
In 1 week alone, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris released 1,500 illegal immigrants into McAllen who were COVID positive.
Across the entire southwest border, illegal crossings are at a 21-year high.
Judging from the number of people I'm seeing down here on Mexico's southern border in the city of Tapachula, those numbers could be about to get very much worse.
Swarms of people, including 19,000 plus unaccompanied children, turning themselves into agents in July.
Our drone video showing a massive group of illegal immigrants being held by Border Patrol under Anzalduas Bridge. It's the largest group we have ever seen.
Critics are sounding the alarm across the country, blaming Biden's border policies.
They will defend the illegal immigrants against the right of Americans.
Day after day, hundreds of thousands of migrants landing in communities across the nation via planes, trains, and automobiles.
Why don't you get this border secure? And until you do that, I don't want to hear a blip about COVID from you.
But those blips aren't going away given the Delta variant.
People are dying and will die who don't have to die.
And if anything, the Biden administration and the CDC are focusing on unvaccinated and unmasked Americans.
Something supersedes that need to do exactly what you want to do,
while almost ignoring the border crisis. Actions like that causing some on the left to call for the president to impose order on the increasingly out-of-control migration.
The Washington Post editorial board is as liberal as they come, probably the most liberal paper in the nation, competing with the New York Times. They know that this is a politically toxic issue.
Agencies on the border report as many as 1 in 5 migrants are showing up with COVID. The administration is reportedly preparing to help control it by offering them vaccines paid for by U.S. tax dollars. In Washington, Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Well, from a surge at the border to a shift in demographics, 2020 census data out today highlights a diversifying country. Growth in Hispanic and Asian communities and a shrinking white population are driving force behind the expanding diversity. The census information released today will shape congressional redistricting ahead of the 2022 midterm elections.
These data play an important role in our democracy and also begin to illuminate how the local and demographic makeup of our nation has changed over the last decade.
And here with us now, Rick Klein, ABC News political director. Rick, welcome back. Good to see you. So let's start right there with the census. How could this new census data shake up next year's midterms?
This is going to be the bones for constructing the congressional district maps in every state. And we're seeing vast changes in the United States. And of course, that's reflected in maps. 7 seats are shifting in various states. You've got states losing, you've got states gaining. And particularly in states that have one-party control, you're going to see some efforts to try to redraw lines to try to benefit that party. That tends to favor Republicans more than Democrats, but it's going to happen everywhere. And this is how it begins with these numbers that we're seeing. You have this portrait of a country that's more diverse than ever. How it plays politically, though, is going to depend on the particular rules and the particular politics of every state. So it is going to be a series of massive battles, all in a very tight time frame in advance of the primaries next year.
Rick, before leaving Washington for the August recess, Senate Democrats passed the framework for the $3.5 trillion infrastructure or human infrastructure budget. You provided some written analysis saying the high price bet puts the House and Senate on the line. Rick, why is this viewed as such a big political gamble?
It's a big bet by Democrats for this vast government expansion. They're talking about this as some of the largest expansions in social programs since the New Deal, and they're doing it only with Democrats. Assuming they can hold the party together, it's a huge gamble that voters are willing to follow them in that direction, that it won't overheat the economy, you won't have inflation, that, of course, COVID has to be in the rearview mirror, I think, for most people's perspective. And I think with all of these investments, they are going to come with price tags. There are going to be additional taxes, particularly on wealthy Americans, and that's tough. It's a tough thing to sell politically. So the Democrats are essentially betting on themselves and their ability to sell this. Otherwise, they are staring down the possibility, if not the likelihood, of losing the House and perhaps the Senate as well. So it's as high risk a moment as you can imagine politically for the Democrats to be pushing something of this magnitude on their own.
Yeah, on the infrastructure plan, does this signal a renewed era at the same time of bipartisanship here in Washington?
It sure could. I mean, that's Biden's hope, and this was a validation of the worldview that he brought to Washington, or brought back to Washington, was that you could get things done. Now, maybe this is a one-off, but 19 Republicans joining with all the Democrats, you don't see that very often these days. And of course, this hasn't passed the House yet either. So there's a lot still has to get done, and it's hard to see how other issues break down similarly. But at least on this issue and investing in the country's infrastructure, roads and bridges and broadband and the like, you've got Democrats and Republicans working together. And again, Biden said that, but a lot of people, including his own colleagues in the Democratic Party, thought it was a fallacy, thought it was a mistake to even try to pursue that. And this is an achievement, though. Infrastructure is something that president after president have wanted to get done. And you have in President Biden someone who's actually advancing the ball on this.
We're always grateful for your political analysis and acumen. Rick Klein, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, a booster shot for the immunocompromised. The FDA expected to announce some Americans will need a third COVID shot. It comes as COVID cases continue to rise. CBN correspondent Brody Carter is following the numbers. Brody.
Well, Jenna, the science and data regarding COVID is moving very fast. We know the J&J vaccine is showing the most promise in protecting against the Delta variant, which is now a global outbreak. Cases are up 24% from last week, with a 31% increase, that is, in hospitalizations. Now, as third world countries desperately need more vaccines, here, health experts say the U.S. fight could be won by getting an additional shot.
Before the COVID vaccine even receives FDA approval, people with weak immune systems may be advised to line up for an emergency use booster shot.
It almost certainly will be, for example, people who have transplantation and who are on immunosuppressive drugs for that, people on therapy for cancer chemotherapy.
The FDA now working with Pfizer to give the go-ahead for about 3% of the population, and if they do, the general public is next.
We believe sooner or later you will need a booster.
As the Delta virus spreads, cases and vaccinations are on the rise. Roughly 500,000 people get a shot daily since June. Numbers have quadrupled in the South.
Across the country, nearly 700 colleges and universities have announced vaccination requirements, which will cover roughly 5 million students getting ready to head back to school.
With more than 4 million kids testing positive for COVID nationwide, that move is extending to lower grades. California now the first state ordering all K-12 teachers and school staff be vaccinated or face regular testing.
Not just teachers, credentialed staff, paraeducators, custodial staff, the bus drivers.
Vaccines also mandated for about 2 million active duty military, 4 million federal workers, and 350,000 VA healthcare workers. And now the Department of Health and Human Services will require 25,000 members to do the same. The White House maintains, however, there will be no federal required vaccination database.
Through vaccination requirements, employers have the power to help end the pandemic.
Despite new protective measures seemingly issued each day, the World Health Organization is prepping for an additional 100 million confirmed cases by early next year. That's why it's urging world leaders to send more tests and vaccinations to poorer nations.
Major companies who've adopted vaccine requirements include McDonald's, Universal, Discovery, Capital One, the NEA representing millions of educators, giving a firm stance in support of vaccinations. And the fight against COVID continues. Jenna, back to you.
All right, thank you, Brody. Well, to the pandemic's impact on the economy, a drop in the number of new jobless claims last week. Today's Labor Department report shows 375,000 new unemployment applications, down about 12,000 from the week before. Overall, about 12 million people are still looking for some sort of government unemployment assistance.
And joining us now is Mark Hamrick, Senior Economic Analyst and Washington Bureau Chief at Bankrate. Hi, Mark. It's great to have you with us this evening. So 375,000 new claims. What's your initial thought on that?
Yeah, Jenna, obviously it's always welcome to see a decline in this headline number, which really is a proxy for layoffs or fresh job loss. We've been bouncing around that number for about 2.5 months now. What is probably most notable in this latest read is the fact that continuing claims, this is the assistance that's paid to jobless Americans through the traditional state programs, did hit a new post-pandemic low. And as you mentioned more broadly, when you include in the federal programs that are set to expire next month, that total then grows to about 12 million. Obviously, that will be going down sharply in about a month.
Mark, inflation over last month dropped a little, but overall, where we were from last year, it is up nearly at 5.5%. A lot of talk about it. So could inflation pose a problem for economic recovery?
Well, I think it's here, John, and we got an upgrade or an update on inflation through the producer price index, which is wholesale inflation. And that means that more inflation is still in the pipeline. We did get some, I would say, reassuring news on the consumer prices front this week, though, when we saw that there was less price pressure on things like used cars, on airfares, and car and truck rentals. But I do think we're going to see some wage pressures here, and wage gains are something that workers celebrate, but not so much for employers when they have to pass those wage gains through. And that'll be something the Federal Reserve will be monitoring very closely. And the thought is that the Fed is probably bringing a interest rate hike closer rather than delaying it quite as long as had been thought.
Mark, I want to ask you about the debt ceiling. Inside the Beltway here, there's a lot of debate about the debt ceiling, and could that politically, could that political fight rather cause issues for average Americans across the country?
It's a great question, Jenna. And if we do not deal with the debt ceiling, the problem is that then the U.S. government stands at risk of default. And we actually had this political game of chicken play out about a decade ago, where it caused a double-digit decline in stock prices before it was eventually dealt with. If indeed this were to be a protracted or prolonged stalemate where it's not raised, which is what essentially needs to be done, then we'd be talking about a severe economic crisis in the U.S., which would ripple through the rest of the world. The reality is the debt ceiling has been proven for decades to be an ineffective means of reining in spending. That spending's already been committed to.
Ineffective, but the system we have. Bankrate's Mark Hamrick, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you.
A Biden administration transgender policy loses in court. Coming up on Faith Nation, what it means for religious freedom.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
This is CBN News Watch. Thanks for joining us. Watch breaking news. exclusive stories and programs, credible news reporting.
We show you what's happening in the world and how you can pray about it.
This is CBN News Watch, because truth matters. Weekdays at 5 on the CBN News Channel.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. Whoa! It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man, come.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Welcome back. An advance in religious liberty for Texas this week. A federal court there has blocked a Biden administration transgender mandate that would have forced doctors to perform gender surgeries on adults and children. It is the second federal court to do so. A Catholic Hospital Association brought the lawsuit, arguing the mandate violated conscious protection. The Biden administration has 60 days to decide whether it will appeal.
Well, Luke Goodrich is Vice President and Senior Counsel with the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty. He joins us now. Luke, welcome to Faith Nation. You are calling this court decision, quote, a victory for common sense, conscience, and sound medicine. Why is this such an important decision in your view?
This is a truly remarkable power grab by the Biden administration to try to order doctors and hospitals all across the country to face multi-million-dollar penalties or else perform gender transition procedures, including on young children, even when doctors and hospitals believe those procedures could be harmful to their patients. So we filed this lawsuit on behalf of a Catholic hospital network and a group of over 20,000 doctors and hospitals all across the country. And these are healthcare professionals that joyfully provide top-notch medical care to all patients for everything from cancer to the common cold. There's just a very narrow slice of highly controversial gender transition procedures that these doctors say, hey, this is harmful. This could harm our patients, and we cannot, in good conscience or in our own medical judgment, perform these procedures.
Luke, there are some who might look at this case and say, because they're Catholic and they don't agree with the transgender lifestyle, they don't want to help transgender patients. What do you say to that line of thinking?
These doctors and hospitals are caring for transgender patients on a daily basis for everything from cancer to the common cold. They'll provide top-notch care, and they do it often free or at very reduced rates. The issue here is a narrow slice of highly controversial gender transition procedures, which studies have shown can be deeply harmful to patients. And so these doctors are saying, hey, in our religious beliefs as a matter of conscience and in our professional experienced medical judgment, we've taken an oath to do no harm. And we can't do these procedures that could be deeply harmful to our patients. And fortunately, the court agreed and said this Biden administration regulation is unlawful.
Luke, we have just a little under a minute left. Do you anticipate the Biden administration will appeal? And if so, how would you fight that?
The Biden administration has 60 days to appeal, and unfortunately, I think they probably will. This is the second court decision that we've obtained at the Becket Fund striking down this Biden administration policy, and they did appeal the first time, so I expect they'll appeal this time as well. But we're relying on a very important federal civil rights law called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. This is the same law that we used to get a Supreme Court victory for Hobby Lobby and the Little Sisters of the Poor. And we're confident that the courts will say the Biden administration, particularly in a pandemic, has no business trying to dictate to doctors and hospitals that they have to perform these highly controversial procedures that can be deeply harmful to patients.
All right, Luke Goodrich with the Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty. Luke, we appreciate you joining us this evening. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Luke. Coming up, why some are using the world's biggest stage to push for change in the communist regime in China.
When I came to Regent University, it's like the world opened up. I felt like I needed to advance my career and go back to school. Regent was a perfect fit for me. The Regent professors are world class. You are equipped. The focus of the faculty is on each individual student, whether it's online or in person. You become a part of Regent's family. You carry with you not just the content and the knowledge, but the confidence to understand that we can be significant in the world.
Regent University. Follow your path.
Nigerian Christians are
Christians in Iran are routinely arrested.
Nepali Christians continue to suffer.
In times of trial and affliction, you need to know the truth.
One of the fastest growing Christian populations in the world.
Join Wendy Griffith and George Thomas for Christian World News.
Young people are the ones who are open to the gospel.
Powerful stories of suffering and hope that affect all Christians. Saturday night at 6 on the CBN News Channel. Get Protect Your Sleep and discover how to improve the quality of your life. A free DVD or booklet from the Christian Broadcasting Network.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
5 leading experts help remove the obstacles between you and restorative sleep.
When you don't get a restful night's sleep, you wake up with an accumulation of stress.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free DVD or booklet today.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
You'll discover how food affects your sleep, how to put insomnia to rest, explore effective remedies for sleep apnea, and much more in Protect Your Sleep. Wake up to your best life and get Protect Your Sleep today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free DVD or booklet.
Back. While the Tokyo Games are over, human rights activists are already focused on the Beijing Winter Olympics set to kick off in just 6 months.
China stands accused of crimes against humanity, including genocide. And as Caitlin Burke reports, calls to boycott the Games are growing louder.
Before the 2008 Olympic Games, China pledged to improve its human rights record. But the Communist Party reversed course, intensifying repression.
They realized they had gotten everything that they wanted, which was the approval of other countries.
More than a decade later, the situation is so bad there that China expert and author Gordon Chang says it's hard to fully conceive.
China's crimes against humanity, including genocide, are comparable to what the Third Reich did prior to the mass exterminations that began in 1941. These are atrocities that the world has not seen for decades.
There's over 1 million Muslim Uyghurs in concentration camps as we speak. The women are partitioned off when they get there and forced into forced abortions, forced sterilization, mass rape campaigns. It's horrific and disgusting. Add that to what's happened in the complete erasure over years of the Tibetan Buddhist culture. The Chinese Communist Party is in an absolute war with any type of religious liberty.
Several lawmakers, including Representative Mike Waltz, have pushed the International Olympic Committee for years to move the upcoming Games out of China. Seeing little to no progress, they're now calling for a boycott.
I just can't imagine seeing the American flag flying there because essentially to President Xi, who's a dictator, it'll be the entire world shrugging their shoulders, turning a blind eye, and saying essentially, tacitly, all of that is okay.
Waltz points to the past when we should have boycotted a host country and didn't.
1936 in Germany, people forget that Russia invaded Crimea just months after the 2014 Sochi Games. We've seen time after time that dictatorships are emboldened when the world turns a blind eye.
At a recent event dubbed the Genocide Games Rally, speakers representing China's persecuted people groups criticized rewarding the communist regime for its atrocities.
During my stay in the concentration camp, I was beaten, injured, and on tortured by unbelievable methods. Here, I would call all the governments and athletes and our organization to boycott 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics.
Chang says it's also important for athletes to truly understand what they risk by competing in China. From surveillance.
This is a state that is determined to learn everything about anyone who is on Chinese soil.
To actually having their DNA collected.
China has a relentlessly determined effort to take the DNA of foreigners. This is ominous. We know that the Chinese military is working on new pathogens. They call it a new type of biological warfare of, quote, specific ethnic genetic attacks. In other words, pathogens that will leave the Chinese immune but sicken everybody else.
As of now, the White House isn't supporting a boycott or responding to safety concerns regarding our athletes. In Europe, a diplomatic boycott is being considered, meaning world leaders wouldn't attend, although businesses and athletes would still participate. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Caitlin. The New York Yankees take on the Chicago White Sox in Iowa? We explain next.
Christians around the world are standing with the Israelis. But why? In CBN's free magazine, Friends of Israel, you'll discover why Christians are supporting the Jewish state, how Israel is fulfilling prophecy as a light to the nations, and ways you can pray for the people of Israel. Israel needs the support of friends like you. Call now or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Friends of Israel.
Heavenly Father, we do thank you for the work of your Spirit, Lord God, with this movement of getting the Bible,
yes,
Lord, into public schools.
Watch The Prayer Link. Tuesday morning at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
They will come. Life imitating movies tonight for one small town in Iowa.
That's right. More than 3 decades after the Field of Dreams hit theaters, 2 of the nation's leading teams will play ball at the same field made famous by that fan favorite film. The New York Yankees and Chicago White Sox have made their way to Dyersville, Iowa, the site Kevin Costner made famous 30 years ago, along with stars Ray Liotta and James Earl Jones. Some 8,000 are expected to pack the stadium stands, specially built for the event. About double the population of Dyersville, Iowa itself. Makes me want to go back and rewatch the movie.
I know. It's been so long since I've seen it, and it's such a classic. 3 Academy Awards, apparently.
Classic indeed.
All right, have a great evening, everybody.
Hope to see you again tomorrow.